On February 8, 1904, Japanese torpedo boats attacked the Russian fleet in Port Arthur Harbor in China. Japanese warships bombarded the shore batteries and began a blockade of the port. 2 days later, formal war was declared, marking the beginning of a surprising David and Goliath conflict. As the new century had begun, the small island country of Japan was concerned about the spread of Russian influence in Manchuria and Korea. When the Russians acquired a lease at nearby Port Arthur in China and established a naval base there, Japan decided to act. Up to that point, all Russian harbors in the Far East were icebound for much of the year, leaving its Pacific fleet virtually useless. A base at Port Arthur would have given Russia its only year-round, ice-free Pacific harbor. The Russian fleet would then have been able to project strength in the Pacific and present a substantial threat to Japan. In the struggle that followed the Japanese attack, Russia suffered from grave disadvantages. Its military establishment in Eastern Asia was not large, and reinforcements and supplies had to pass over the Trans-Siberian Railroad, which stretched 5,500 miles from Moscow. Japan, on the other hand, was well supplied and had only a short sea passage from its home bases to the fighting zones. 3 months after the conflict began, the Russian army was driven out of Korea and into Manchuria, where most of the land actions of the war were fought. The Japanese pushed northward, and in March 1905 broke Russian resistance. During the 19-day Battle of Mukden, Russia lost more than 200,000 men. The main Russian naval strength was the Baltic Sea Fleet, halfway around the world from the conflict. The fleet left its home port in October 1904 for a 10,000-mile voyage to East Asia. After a 7-month trip around the Cape of Good Hope, the Russian fleet neared Japan on its way to the naval base in Siberia. On May 27, 1905, in the straits between Japan and Korea, the Russians were intercepted by the Japanese fleet. In the battle that followed, Japanese leadership, discipline, and gunnery proved far superior. When the action ended the next day, only 6 of the 30 Russian ships escaped. The rest had been sunk or captured, leaving Russia with virtually no navy. After more than a year of fighting, both Russia and Japan had suffered severe hardships. Russia faced a brewing revolution at home, and Japan was financially exhausted. Both sides wanted peace. Peace talks, arranged by President Theodore Roosevelt, led to a treaty signed at Portsmouth, New Hampshire on September 6, 1905. Russia yielded Port Arthur and the southern half of Sakhalin Island. They also agreed to withdraw from Manchuria and recognize Japan's dominant influence in Korea. The unexpected Japanese victory over the Russian giant shocked the world and won Japan recognition as a major power. It dealt a crippling blow to Russian military plans in Korea and Manchuria and virtually eliminated Russian naval power in the Far East. The worst damage was to the prestige of Tsar Nicholas II, who was the first leader of a modern European country to lose a war to an Asian power. Russia's disaster in the Far East revealed its military shortcomings to the world. Germany now began to think that they could also defeat Russia in battle. In 10 years, they would put the theory to a test in World War I.